All right, buckle up, everybody, because we're diving straight into a situation that is literally unfolding as we speak.
Yeah, that's right.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Huge news.
Absolutely massive after over 15 months of, really intense conflict.
Right.
Um, and this news comes straight from the Associated Press live update, so it's as fresh as it gets.
You know what's remarkable about this one?
What's that?
It's not just another political agreement.
Right.
This is about real people.
Yeah, hostages, families forced from their homes, and
Mm.
just, an entire region that is just yearning for peace.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who've been following this conflict closely, just how significant even a temporary pause in the fighting could be.
It's crucial to understand, though, that this isn't just a pause.
Okay.
It's a very carefully structured agreement,
Okay.
and it's designed to pave the way for something more lasting.
Interesting. So walk us through those phases.
Sure.
What does this ceasefire actually look like in practice, and what should we be paying attention to as things unfold?
So the first phase,
Okay.
this is really interesting, focuses on the most vulnerable.
Okay.
The release of hostages, particularly women and children, the elderly, the wounded,
Right?
and in return, Israel would release Palestinian prisoners that they are currently holding.
So it's a prisoner swap?
It's not a simple prisoner swap.
Okay.
It's a very carefully calibrated exchange
I see.
that's meant to build trust,
Right.
to show both sides are willing to take those concrete steps towards de-escalation.
But even that first step isn't a done deal, right? Because the Associated Press mentioned that the agreement still needs approval from Netanyahu's cabinet.
Absolutely.
So if they don't give it the green light, the whole thing could fall apart.
Absolutely. And that's where the real tension lies.
Right.
Because Netanyahu's cabinet is known for its diverse viewpoints.
Yeah.
And there's a real possibility that some members might see this deal as too conciliatory.
Right. Too soft.
Exactly. And it'll be really interesting to see how those internal politics within Israel play out, because they could have a huge impact on the future of the ceasefire.
And what about the hostages themselves? I mean, the article mentioned nearly 100 hostages are still in Gaza, and tragically, Israel believes that at least a third of them may already be dead.
Right.
And even for those who might be released, what are they returning to?
It's a good question.
The AP quoted one displaced Gazan woman as saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, that she doesn't even know where they would go even if they could return because everything has been bombed.
That's a heartbreaking reality. And
Yeah.
we can't ignore that.
Yeah,
Even if this ceasefire holds the scars of this conflict run deep,
absolutely.
imagine just for a moment your home, your community, your entire life reduced to rubble.
Right.
Rebuilding from that, both physically and emotionally,
Yeah.
is a monumental task.
It's a stark reminder that this isn't just about politics. It's about people's lives, their homes, their families, their sense of normalcy, all shattered by this conflict.
And that's precisely why this ceasefire,
Yeah.
despite its fragility, has generated such intense reactions.
Well, yeah, I mean, from former President Trump's characteristically bold,
Right.
"We have a deal"
Yeah,
post on Truth Social,
exactly.
to Senator Risch's cautious optimism during a confirmation hearing.
Right. Everyone's watching closely to see how this unfolds.
Yeah.
But for me, the most powerful reactions are
Hmm.
coming from the people of Gaza themselves.
You're talking about the celebrations that the AP reported on, right?
That's
People
all.
taking to the streets, car horns blaring.
Yes, a sense of relief, maybe even a glimmer of hope amidst all the devastation.
Right.
And, those celebrations highlight just how desperate the situation in Gaza has become.
Yeah.
According to the AP, 90%
No,
of Gaza's 2.3 million population has been displaced,
that's almost everybody.
with this looming threat of famine.
Oh, wow.
This ceasefire, if it holds, could be a lifeline,
Right.
opening the door for much-needed aid and the start of a long and arduous rebuilding process.
Yeah. But as we've been discussing, the ceasefire itself is just the first step. And you've pointed out that even within Israel, there are doubts and potential roadblocks.
Absolutely.
So before we dive into what a lasting peace might require,
Sure.
I want to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
What are the key reactions from the international community?
Yeah.
How are world leaders and organizations responding to this news, and how might those responses shape what happens next?
Great question. Well, the international community is responding with, I'd say, a mix of cautious optimism
Okay.
and a recognition of the deep-seated challenges
Right.
that lie ahead.
Sure.
Many world leaders have expressed support for the agreement,
Okay.
emphasizing the need for both sides to, honor their commitments,
Right.
work towards a more lasting solution.
Of course, but there's also an awareness that this conflict has a long and complex history.
Absolutely.
And previous attempts at peace have, often faltered.
Yeah, they haven't always worked out so well.
So what are some of the specific reactions that stand out to you? Are there any countries or organizations that seem to be taking a more active role in trying to ensure that this ceasefire holds?
Well, the United Nations has been very vocal
Okay.
in its support, calling for an immediate end to the violence
Right.
and urging both sides to engage in meaningful dialogue.
Yeah, makes sense.
They've also pledged to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza,
Yeah,
which is absolutely crucial given the scale of the devastation there.
absolutely.
And Egypt has also played a key role
Okay.
in brokering this agreement
Right.
and is likely to continue to exert its influence in the region
Yeah.
to try to maintain stability.
It's interesting you mentioned Egypt.
Yeah.
They have kind of a unique position
Right.
in this conflict, given their historical relationship with both Israel and the Palestinians.
Absolutely.
Do you think their involvement increases the chances of this ceasefire actually holding?
Well, it certainly adds another layer of complexity
Sure.
and perhaps a bit of leverage.
Right.
Egypt has a vested interest in seeing stability in the region,
Of course.
and they've demonstrated a willingness to work with both sides.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember
Yeah.
that ultimately, the success of this ceasefire hinges on the actions of Israel and Hamas.
Right.
No amount of external pressure can force peace if there isn't a genuine commitment from within.
That's a good point. You've touched on a crucial point, that commitment from within. We've
Yeah.
been discussing the immediate reactions, the international response.
Right.
But now I want to zoom out a bit and tackle the bigger picture.
Sure.
Even if this ceasefire holds, is lasting peace even a realistic goal?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but you mentioned the deep-seated challenges.
Yeah.
What are the biggest obstacles standing in the way of a truly peaceful resolution?
Well, you have to start with the deep ideological divide
Oh, good.
between Israel and Hamas.
Right.
As many of you know, Hamas is considered a terrorist organization by many countries
Right.
and doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist.
Right.
That's a fundamental disagreement.
Yeah.
That's incredibly difficult to bridge.
Absolutely. And then you have the issue of security. I mean, both sides feel threatened. Both have legitimate grievances.
Right.
And both have resorted to violence in the past.
Absolutely.
Building trust in that kind of environment is incredibly difficult.
Incredibly difficult.
And it's not just about the two main players, right?
Right.
There are so many other factors at play.
Absolutely.
Internal divisions within both Israel and the Palestinian territories,
Yeah.
the role of neighboring countries, the influence of global powers.
It's a tangled web.
It is a tangled web. So
Yeah.
how do we even begin to untangle that web?
Well, unraveling that web requires more than just a ceasefire.
Okay.
It requires a fundamental shift
Okay.
in mindset,
Right.
a willingness to compromise, to acknowledge the other side's humanity,
Yeah.
and to find a way to coexist peacefully.
We've talked a lot about the challenges, but I'm curious, are there any glimmers of hope? Are there any factors that might actually work in favor of a more lasting peace this time around?
Well, one potential factor is the sheer exhaustion of war.
Guys?
Both Israelis and Palestinians have endured decades of conflict,
Right.
with countless lives lost and immense suffering on both sides.
Of course.
This latest round of fighting has been particularly devastating for Gaza.
Right.
And there's a sense that the population on both sides
Okay.
might be more receptive to a peaceful resolution than they have been in the past.
Makes sense when you've experienced the horrors of war firsthand. The appeal of peace, even a fragile peace, becomes much stronger.
Absolutely.
But even if there is a genuine desire for peace among the people,
Yeah,
can that desire translate into concrete action from their leaders?
that's the key question.
Yeah.
And it's where the international community can potentially play a role.
Okay, how so?
By providing incentives for peaceful cooperation, by facilitating dialogue, by offering support for rebuilding and reconciliation efforts. They can help create an environment where peace is not just a distant hope,
Okay.
but a tangible possibility.
So it sounds like there are some potential pathways towards a more lasting peace.
Yeah.
but it's going to be a long and difficult road.
Absolutely.
Before we delve deeper into what those pathways might look like, I want to shift gears slightly
Okay.
and focus on a specific aspect of the conflict that's been particularly heartbreaking to witness:
Okay.
the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza.
Right.
We've already touched on the devastation, the displacement, the looming threat of famine, but I want to explore this further.
Okay.
What are the immediate needs of the people in Gaza?
Yeah.
And how can those needs be addressed effectively in a way that contributes to long-term stability?
Right.
You know, we've been talking about the long road ahead,
Right.
the challenges to peace, the role of the international community.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to remember that this isn't just about, abstract political concepts.
Right. Okay.
This is about real people whose lives have been shattered by this conflict.
Of course.
And the AP report paints just a grim picture
Yeah.
of the situation in Gaza right now.
Right.
Widespread displacement, shortages of food, water, and medicine,
It's tough.
and a healthcare system that's been pushed to the brink.
It's a humanitarian crisis
Yeah,
of immense proportions.
absolutely. And it's a crisis that demands immediate action.
Absolutely.
The people of Gaza need food, they need shelter, they need medical care, and they need it now.
Right now.
But even beyond those immediate needs,
Yeah.
there's also the long-term challenge of rebuilding infrastructure,
Of course.
revitalizing the economy,
Right.
and addressing the trauma
Yeah. The psychological trauma.
that this conflict has inflicted on the population.
Absolutely. It's a lot.
It's a daunting task, to say the least, but it's a task that the international community cannot afford to ignore.
They can't.
We've already seen some pledges of aid coming in,
Yeah.
but is it enough?
That's a good question.
And are those pledges being translated into concrete action on the ground?
Yeah. That's the crucial question.
Right.
And it's where things get a little tricky.
Okay.
Because providing aid to Gaza is not just about logistics. It's also about politics.
Okay.
There are concerns about aid falling into the wrong hands,
Right.
about it being used to support militant groups,
Right.
about it not reaching the people who need it most.
Right. So these are legitimate concerns,
They are.
but they can't be an excuse for inaction.
They cannot.
So how do we navigate those complexities? How do we ensure that aid is delivered effectively
Right.
and that it actually makes a difference in the lives of the people of Gaza?
Well, it requires a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, we need to work with trusted organizations on the ground.
Okay.
Organizations that have a proven track record
Right.
of delivering aid impartially and efficiently.
Right.
Second, we need to establish clear mechanisms for monitoring and accountability to ensure that aid is reaching its intended recipients
Right.
and is not being diverted for other purposes.
I see.
And third, we need to invest in long-term development projects.
Okay.
Projects that empower the Palestinian people, create jobs, and help build a more sustainable future for Gaza.
And it sounds like such a massive undertaking.
It is.
But, as we heard from that displaced Gazan woman quoted in the AP article, even amidst the rubble,
Yeah.
there's a deep longing to return home, to rebuild lives.
Absolutely.
And that resilience,
Yes.
that determination
It's powerful.
gives me a sliver of hope.
It's a powerful testament to the human spirit.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Right.
there's always a flicker of hope.
Yeah.
But that hope needs to be nurtured.
Right.
It needs to be supported.
Absolutely.
And that's where each of us has a role to play.
What do you mean? How can we as individuals make a difference in a conflict that seems so far removed from our own lives?
Well, it starts with awareness. Stay informed about what's happening in Gaza.
Right.
Educate yourself about the complexities of this conflict.
Right.
Challenge simplistic narratives and engage in meaningful conversations with others.
Makes sense?
Support organizations that are working to provide aid and promote peace.
Yeah.
And most importantly, don't let this issue fade from your attention.
Right.
The people of Gaza need our support, our solidarity, and our unwavering commitment to a just and peaceful resolution.
It's a powerful message, and it's a message that I really hope resonates with our listeners.
Me too.
This ceasefire is a fragile opportunity,
It is.
a chance to break the cycle of violence and build a future where Israelis and Palestinians can coexist peacefully.
Absolutely.
It's a long shot,
It is.
but it's a shot worth taking.
It absolutely is.
And it's a shot that requires all of us to be engaged, to be informed, and to be relentless in our pursuit of peace.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been a deep dive into a complex and ever-evolving situation, and we'll continue to follow this story closely for our listeners. I encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful even amidst the devastation. There's always a glimmer of hope, and it's that glimmer that we need to hold on to. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with more deep dives into the issues that matter most.